Aloha. Welcome to the Healing with Aloha podcast. I'm Deslynn Jaquias. And on this podcast, we talk about grief, we talk about mental health, we talk about healing, and we talk about passion. And, we are blessed to have our special guest today, Katty Douraghy. And she's going to be sharing with us some great things, talking about hope and grief, which is, what this podcast has been about. Initially, when I started it back in 2019, she's an entrepreneur, author, and facilitator. Her memoir, The Butterfly Years, A Journey Through Grief Toward Hope, details her personal journey through grief. Katty hopes to inspire others to work through grief and find hope on the other side. She is also the president of Artisan Creative, a staffing and recruiting agency focused on digital, creative, and marketing talent and based in Los Angeles. So I'd like to send a warm aloha and welcome you onto this podcast. Hi, Katty. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you, Deslynn. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the beautiful introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you share with people a little bit about what led you to writing a memoir that is so special and so dear to your heart about grief?
Absolutely. Happy to. So my intention was not to write a memoir. So I'll say that initially for everybody to kind of see what the arc of the story was. I went through a pretty dark period of time for a few years. I lost my mom, my dad, and my stepmom within 4 months of each other. And then 2 years later, I lost a cousin and an uncle. And then 2 years later after that, I lost my stepdad. So in about a 4-year period, about 6 people that were very, very close to me passed away. And as I struggled to come out of that darkness over time, I learned a thing or two about just what worked for me, how I was able to move aside from this darkness. And that's why I use the butterfly analogy, and the book is called The Butterfly Years, because it really felt like I was in this dark chrysalis. But I did come out of it. I came out of it and I spread my wings and I took flight. So what I intended to do, what I first set out, was to create a journal. I wanted to have a kind of a self-help journal for people who are going through the grieving process, because writing had helped me so much. And that was one of the tools, if you will, that I had utilized. I wanted to create a space for people to be able to do that. And as I started on the journal, this other story, like the personal story, kept wanting to come out. And so I kept struggling with it. I didn't want to write a memoir, but the memoir was what was showing up on paper. So it took me 3 years to write this little book. Because I think I was just in conflict with not necessarily wanting to share the personal story. And once I did, it was so cathartic, and it would really helped me on that road towards hope and towards healing. So in a long way around, I ended up creating the journal afterward, but the memoir came first.
But I think it's interesting, and it's amazing how you intended to go about it one way, and then you're prompted and inspired to go about it this way. And like you said, like the reason why you chose it to be the butterfly, it's like, the progress, the struggle that a caterpillar goes through to become a butterfly, it's a struggle.
Yes. And it's a painful struggle from all accounts that I've read about.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand that everyone goes about it differently, how they deal with their grief. But you're just sharing from your personal experience and hope that someone else can understand that, your relationship, your understanding is going to be different from the next person, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you said it because I think that was one of my biggest lessons learned, was that, and I think I'm the first to admit that the grieving process initially had a lot of judgment tied into it for me. I kept questioning myself if I was grieving the right way. I was watching others around me and my family making judgments as to like, they're not grieving enough, or they should be grieving more, and that was the biggest lesson, really realizing that, very much like a fingerprint, everybody just goes through it on their own, right? And who am I to judge how somebody else is processing it? And who am I to judge myself even? So that self-judgment was a big piece of that. And then just accepting it, recognizing it, that, yeah, it's been 10 years, but I still sometimes go through it. So a memory triggers something, and that's okay to just, to give ourselves the permission to feel the emotion whenever we need to feel the emotion. So,
yeah. And I think like what you said is true, like, especially like with our families and people who are close to us, like we all address grief differently. Some people are more outward.
Yep.
And some people are more inward, and not one is better than the other. But that's something that people need to realize, that we're just trying to go through life and to do it the best that we know how.
Yeah, exactly. And just from a culture perspective is also very different. And that was another lesson in that, obviously I live here. I've grown up in the West, but my origins are from the Middle East, from Iran. And it's just different how people show emotion and how they grieve over there than they do here. So I just felt like I was stuck in this duality of whether I was doing it the right way or not.
Yeah.
And there is no right way and there's no wrong way. It just is, right?
I think like what I wanted you to share is like, because everybody, I don't know how to say, when we deal with a loss, like whether it's a loved one or like, there's secondary losses and whatnot. What did you learn? Because you went from losing your mom, your dad, you said your stepdad, your uncle. What did you find as you went through the process of, like, it was like one person, then the next person, like, what did you do to help yourself to cope, or to acknowledge that, this loved one, this is their time, and I don't know if that I'm saying it the right way.
So it was interesting in that some of the people who passed was after a long health battle. And some of the people who passed had been ill, but they had kept it very private. So not too many people. And in some cases, I didn't even know. And some of the people who passed suddenly without any, like one day they were there and next day they weren't. And they were both incredibly shocking and incredibly painful, but in different ways. And in some of the ways, in my mom's case, at least, it had been such a long battle with lung cancer that I hadn't quite reconciled it, but I had grieved for 7 years before she died. I mean, I knew what was coming. So like we were all going through this cancer treatment together, grieving the loss from the beginning. My stepdad went suddenly, and I felt like I never had a chance to say what I wanted to say. And, I feel fortunate that I did say I love you to him 2 nights before he passed in our last conversation. But so there again, whether it's a long loss, whether it's an immediate loss, they all affect us very, very differently, and they affect every person differently. So I'm not sure if there was like one lesson learned necessarily, because they were such different journeys, as how that is. But I do know that the night after my mom died, I think something just really odd was happening to me. Like my senses were very activated. I've talked about this. I talk about it in the book, which is something that I had a hard time reconciling. Like colors were brighter, food tasted more tasty. Like I felt like I was alive. And that alone came with guilt too, right? But I think what I realized is at that moment, for the first time ever, I recognized how precious life was. And it somehow instilled in me this appreciation for everything around me. You know, I was like, oh, I've never heard a bird before like that. I've never seen the green color of a grass like that. And so something just woke up in me in this time when there was so much death around me. I think I thought I was living for them. So
wow. Yeah. And then it's so surreal. Like you said, you didn't expect that. Mm-hmm. That you be like reactivating and like, it's just a wonderful life.
Yeah.
Like that's almost like the way you're explaining it, you feel like it's such a wonderful life. Yeah. You know, and it's interesting how we can feel guilty for appreciating life, because I think like for me, when my sister was like the closest relationship to me, she passed away 2001. It was hard because it was unexpected. It was an unexpected death. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, I talked to her that day and then she had passed away. But the ability to live life, you know, the guilt is something that I had to like work through, you know what I mean? And so it's interesting like how you share that that's something that we can have in common. A lot of times when we're grieving is being able to embrace life on behalf of them, because when you think about some like our loved ones, some of them, they just want you to be happy. And then that's something I had to come resolve with. It's like the same love and happiness they wanted for us, it's still the same.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting because we know they want that for us. And it's another thing for us to allow ourselves to accept that. And so that you know, the self-judgment that I was mentioning earlier, I think a lot of that's also entwined into that. I remember laughing at something and then taking a pause and saying, should I be laughing? Like, should I be happy at this moment? I'm sad. Why am I laughing? And just this back and forth was really interesting. I did read something in a book called The Other Side of Sadness, is I believe the name of the book, by George Bonanno. Are you familiar with it?
No.
And he talks about this concept of oscillation, that, you know, we laugh, we cry, we, you know, like we breathe in, we breathe out. So it's like that whole oscillation of emotions is actually a pretty natural thing. But I didn't know about it back then. So when I was laughing and then thinking, well, I shouldn't be laughing, I should be sad.
Right. You know, and you know, I think because a lot of it is ingrained in us, right? That this is how you grieve. My sister, she was so funny. She's like, I swear she should have become a comedian. Like she was just a naturally funny person. And so a lot of times when I laugh, it reminds me of her. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But I think humor has a way of helping us cope.
Yes.
You know, with our sadness.
Yes, absolutely. Humor does, community does. I mean, what you've created here to create a community for others to talk about this is so beautiful and so empowering. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. One of the things that I wanted for you to share is how can we activate hope?
Well, you can't see it on my wall. I have a little quote on my wall that says, "Dwell in possibilities," which is an Emily Dickinson quote. And I'm a firm believer that we just need to allow ourselves to just receive whatever it is that's coming at us. And hope is one of those things. And it's maybe it's not tangible, maybe it's this thing that's out there, but having this fundamental belief that tomorrow will be better than it is today. I don't know how, but that's what I'm holding on to, that tomorrow will be better, that I have the capacity within me to make it better. And as I was going through my grieving process, how I did that was through writing, through journaling, through gratitude, having a gratitude practice, having a meditation practice. These were my little tools in my toolbox to take care of myself. And it was through that self-care. There's many paths to get there, but for me, those self-care little tools were my way of taking control of something, because obviously we can't control anything else that's out there. We can't control, unfortunately, the losses. There's nothing that we can do there. The only thing I could control was, can I take care of myself? Yes. So believing that tomorrow is going to be better, believing that we have the capacity within us to make that happen, knowing that different people take different paths, and that there will be definitely times that we're going to stumble and fall, and be okay with that, right? It's just be kind to ourselves to get there. And I think that's a really powerful way of activating hope, making it happen.
Thank you. I really appreciate like the way you're explaining it. Like, yeah, it's not tangible, but like there is that hope and expectation that, okay, right now it sucks. Right now is hurtful. Right now it's painful. Right, whatever it is that we can be feeling, but just holding on that tomorrow. You know what I mean? And then just dealing with. I feel like each moment as it comes. Yeah. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but in the beginning of your grief journey, when you look ahead, like a week, a year, it seems overwhelming. But to be able to pull back and what you said, like you found a tool, and I think it's important for everybody to find a tool to help with your self-care, and writing just happened to be your tool.
Yeah, there are so many tools out there if we are open to utilizing them. I'm by no means an exercise person, just to tell that to your audience. But Zumba ended up being, who knew? Like, I started working out and I started going to dance classes. And I did that with guilt, because I wasn't sure if I should be dancing and being happy. The endorphins were kicking in. But boy, it was helping me. It was helping my mindset. It was helping my mood. So I'd dance, and then maybe I would have a couple of tears at the same time. It was just such a confusing time, but recognizing, and I think this is an important thing for everyone to recognize, different things will help each of us differently. For me, it happened to be music, working out, dancing, writing, meditating. For some people, it could be nature. For others, it could be cooking, whatever it may be, but to just know that we have that within us. We may not see it yet because we're so deep into it. And that's where hope comes into play. It's one of these days, it will be better. The loss will never go away. As you know, it's been 21 years since your sister passed. Yeah. It's been 11 years since my parents passed. It still feels like yesterday.
That's what I tell people. It still feels like yesterday. Yeah. It just, you just shift.
Yeah.
Accordingly, and I think it's a beautiful thing when you're able to find what helps you to get through. Like you said, everybody has different tools, and some people are ready to explore those tools. Some people aren't, and it's okay, but that there's options for us when we're ready to process and
exactly
and begin healing.
Exactly. And it's funny, Deslynn, because little things happen that trigger us, and it takes us back to that very first moment of hearing of the loss. I was just talking to one of my colleagues an hour ago, And I said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And she's like, oh, I'm going to take my dad out for dinner. And I'm like, oh, is it his birthday? And she says, no, it's Father's Day. And then for like, whoosh, I was like back to the moment of, oh, I'd forgotten that it's Father's Day. I don't have a dad to celebrate. And I could so easily go into that mode of loss again. But I also choose to say, you know what? Yeah, it's Father's Day. I'm going to pour a glass of his favorite wine and celebrate him on
Cheers
Father's
Dad,
Day,
yeah.
right? That's what he would have wanted. And
right.
that's what we would have done if he were here. We would have celebrated together. So that's what I choose now, is to celebrate.
But that is, I think that's what, like, that gives hope to hear someone share. Like you said, it's been 10 years. My dad passed away also 10 years ago. And so we finally just did we did our celebration of life for my dad just now. But like to be able to transition and to be able to honor and remember them in our own special way, like that's something that is beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
It may not be right away, but
I'm curious. So the celebration of life for your dad happened just recently, like on the 10th anniversary.
No, you know what? It was like a few months after. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it at the beach.
Beautiful.
A beach that like he enjoyed going to. And it was real private. We didn't have like a big thing. When my sister passed away, we had a really big, like it was hundreds and hundreds of people, at hers, but it was more intimate with my siblings and then his siblings. And so, yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm so grateful to have had a chance to meet with you and to talk about something that is so important, and just being able to let people know that you matter, and talking about it, it's important. That maybe we're not in a setting that people around us is ready to talk about it, but we can talk about it. And so I'm so glad that you took the time to come and share about grief and your memoir, and just how it started with an idea to do a journal to help other people, and then here you are. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way, either through my own website, kattydouraghy.com, or through the butterflyyears.com is the book of the journal and has my contact. And also I'm on Instagram, so I'll be following you. And the Butterfly Years Journal is the Instagram handle. And I'm on LinkedIn, so you can't not find me.
If there's a will, there's a way.
You got it.
But guys, thank you so much for listening in and getting to know Katty. Katty. Sorry. Sorry. It's just like my name. My name is so difficult. And just take the time to, look at her book and really immerse yourself and desire to understand your grief journey and how you're able to help someone else too with their process. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Healing with Aloha. Guys, take care and aloha.
Aloha.